Cognitive education and literacy helps students learn English, improve their reading or math, obtain their high school diploma, prepare for entry into college, or be ready for a career training program. Call-in AEL classes are held all over Collin County. Classes are in libraries, schools, community centers, workplaces, religious organizations, and even online. There are more than 50 classes, and that number is growing. Call-in AEL is funded through a grant from the Texas Workforce Commission. Individuals with a high school diploma experience less unemployment and earn more money. Plus, higher levels of education lead to better jobs, higher pay, and reduced reliance on social services. People enroll with Call-in AEL for their own personal reasons, like being able to read to their grandchildren, helping their children with their homework, finishing high school so they can qualify for certain jobs, even simply feeling less isolated and more connected to their community. Anyone, regardless of the language they speak or the level of school they've completed, can enroll for AEL services. The most important condition for enrollment is the desire to achieve your fullest potential. It's important to know that enrollment happens all the time. You can join a class in a matter of a few days and get started right away on achieving your goals. So what are you waiting for? Call us at 972-349-4550. We can't wait to hear from you.
So there it is. Isn't that cute?
Yes, very nice.
She's just,
Awesome.
she's actually just somebody who, she works, like, we both work for Dewana, but she doesn't work, like, she just is kind of a case management person. And I've discovered this talent of hers, and I forced her to do stuff like that for me.
Neat.
And so she taught herself, like, she did the whole thing, and then she taught herself how to create that video, and she made it herself. And that's actually her voice. And then for the Spanish one, we got Giselle. You guys know Giselle. She's in the leadership.
Yeah, Lumbreras, something.
Yeah, Hardy. It's
Hardy. Yeah, Hardy. Yeah.
And so she's the one that voices the Spanish one. So it's really cute. It's fun.
Nice.
Good morning, Amy. Good morning, Robin.
Good morning. How are y'all doing today?
Hi there.
Good.
Hi. Good. Another pretty day. Hi, Amy.
Hi, how are you guys?
Pretty good. How are
So
y'all?
Ashley was sharing this video that they did a push out yesterday, right, on Facebook, and now they have like 50 people that have sent inquiries about enrolling in the program. So
Yeah, I was watching that. That is incredible.
We're having to do triage this morning because we got all these emails overnight, and we're like, oh, we got full-time people in, or part-time people in. Ooh, what do we have that's bilingual and available during the day?
How can I access that and see it?
It's on our Facebook, Call-in AEL Facebook page.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I see folks coming in now, and I just want to welcome you. We have a few minutes till we get started. And welcome to our 4th webinar focused on data for our Administrator Leadership Excellence Academy. Really happy to be back together. Feels like we haven't been together in a long time. And have everybody back together. So we have a jam-packed webinar today, chock full of great stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started now. Welcome to our 4th webinar of our Administrator Leadership Excellence Academy. Sudie and I are really thrilled to be back together. It feels like a long time. Today's webinar is focused on using data for continuous improvement. You guys remember who we are, and we're on our videos now, so we won't reintroduce ourselves, but I would like to say that we're really thrilled to be back with our LEA community, and bravo to all of you. I know since we've last been together, school has started, and you know, I know this is a very unusual year, and I just want to thank you all for what you continue to do for our students, and, you know, congratulate you on a kickstart of an unusual year. Before we jump in, I'd love to ask you just for a warm-up and ask you to share with our group in the chat, what's your superpower? So just as our way of getting warmed up and sharing a little bit with one another, what's something that you can do that amazes people or even yourself? It can be anything, a personal skill or talent, something you do professionally. Maybe your superpower is being a great listener and getting people to collaborate. Maybe you can do something amazing athletically or in the kitchen, but decide what you think your superpower is and go ahead and put it in the chat, please. I see some coming in. I'm going to give you a few minutes. I see some folks saying patience. Lori says persistence. Sudi's a super collaborator. That's true. Kelly says she's a super mom of 3 and that amazes her husband. Yes, being a mom is a superpower for sure, Kelly. Laura teaches her daughter 2nd grade while working a full-time job. Wow. Hats off to you moms who are homeschooling and working and doing it all. Deb's a great cook. Mauro stays calm in a time of crisis. That's a great skill to have, especially right now. Joyce says she can cook better than her 2 sisters. Nice. Giselle's a cat whisperer. Carla never gives up. Denise has grit. And Carly also says she's a patient person. Angela's a cheerleader. Gamaliel has patience. I see a lot of patience here from a number of you, and I think that's an amazing skill overall, and definitely these days when we're all kind of living in unique and difficult times. Helena says she can have a conversation with anyone. I love that. Marcus and Taylor say understanding. Krista's strong in the face of issues, and Ashley says resilience. So those are awesome. Thank you guys so much for sharing. Really appreciate that. And now we'll bring our superpowers to our webinar today. And when we get back together in person one day, I hope we'll be able to sample some of that cooking too. So just as a reminder, we're getting very close to the end of our training and our time together. Today's our 4th webinar, and we have one final training day, which will be virtual on November 9th. And we'll be sharing more information about that in the portal with you guys and getting ready for that. So today's objectives are really that, as I said, we're going to be focused on data and the improvement process. So we're going to refresh on the DDDM process that we talked about when we first got together, our first in-person day in Austin. We're going to understand why and how to collaboratively look at data with your team. And I'm really excited because we're going to be hearing from a panel of Texas adult education leaders on the strategies they are using for data and program improvement. And so kind of how is it really working on the ground, and getting some really good tools and kind of samples from them about how they're using data in particular with their teams to make program improvements. And then we'll talk a little bit about our preparations for our final check-in on the 9th. So with that, let's move to our first topic, which is the data-driven decision-making process, and Sudi is going to take it away.
Sorry, can you hear me and can you see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. Wonderful. Good morning, friends. So good to be with you guys again, with you guys and gals again. All right, so let's get into data-driven decision-making. Let's do a quick recap. So we talked about the DDDMP process at our very first session together back in Austin, and we had wonderful data team staff come and talk with us and share this process with us. So we're just going to review this process. They are 1, know your mission. 2, identify data sources. 3, organize data. 4, analyze data. And 5, draw conclusions. That's our data-driven decision-making process. So when we're looking at that, during our time together in Austin, we had an overview of looking at data, and a really fun mnemonic was shared with us. My sister often attracts drama, which stands for mission, sources, organize data, analyze data, and draw conclusions. This is a really great way to remember those 5 steps. So I'm going to say it again. My sister often attracts drama, mission, source, organize data, analyze data, and draw conclusions. Now, before we jump into doing this collaboratively, let's do a really quick poll. And so I want you to address this poll. How often do you analyze data with your staff and instructional team? Is it never, rarely, a few times a year, monthly, more than monthly, or a different time frame altogether that you would like to specify? If you want to tell us a different time frame, please put that into the chat. Can we bring up the poll? Thank you. And let me get my chat over here. I lost my chat box. There it is. So looking at it, it looks like no one has said never or rarely, so that's awesome. Okay. Got about 21 more seconds if you want to continue your votes. Oh, Tyler said daily in the chat. Awesome, Tyler. Taylor, sorry. I apologize for mispronouncing your name, Taylor. Angela also says daily. Wonderful. Okay, so I think we are settled on responses here. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. So we have 16% said a few times a year, 32 said monthly. The majority of you, which is 12 of you, said more than monthly. And then one of you marked other, and we actually had 2 others in the chat box. So we do have a few of you looking at that daily. That is fantastic. Alrighty, so that's wonderful. So we don't have anybody who's never looking at data, so that's fabulous. So let's go into our chat question. What are some of the pros of looking at data with your team? Why do you think that's a good idea to do that? What do you think are some pros of looking at data with your team? What are some cons? What do you think? Share in the chat. And I just lost my chat box again. There it is. What do you think are some of the pros of looking at data? Pros, part of our CQI process, debriefing and asking questions. Informed decision and strategy, wonderful. Getting over viewpoints of everyone, transparency. My box is too small, make it bigger. Tell us you're making your goals. Let us know we need to make improvements, wonderful. Improve process, knowing what programs are successful, seeing trends, wonderful. Give you a clear picture of what's going on. Helps keep pulse on what's happening in the program. Wonderful strategy, developing goals. Okay, so let's move on to cons. What are some of the cons of looking at data? It looks like we're all pretty clear that it helps us to identify trends for data decision making and identify areas of issues. But what are some of the cons? Teachers don't always understand it. Exactly. There's education needed there, right? And another con that was data can be overwhelming. Confusion, not understanding. It can cause stress, Joyce said. Angela said it can be frustration. I agree. Sometimes you spend more time looking at data and not taking action. Gamiel, very beautiful observation. And that's where it becomes a little frustrating there too. Confusing, you don't understand the database, and it can be confusing, yes. Staff that are mission driven lose motivation. Doesn't get the complete picture. Data is ever changing. You need to know what to share and what not to share. Very good. Takes a long time to pull and analyze. Not accepting the data because it doesn't tell you what you want. Yes, Maura, that's that confirmation bias piece, right? Data, looking at the data to look for what you want to see instead of what's really there. Not accepting the data because it doesn't tell you what you want. Some message, different audience, same message, different audience. Connecting AEL data to larger institutional data. Very interesting, Shanice, I like that. All right, wonderful. So we know that there are some pros and cons to collaboratively looking at data and looking at data with your team, right, to looking at data in general. But we can overcome some of those cons if we have a better process in place. So let's talk about why we should analyze data with our teams. So why is it a good idea? Well, it builds awareness and understanding of the team members' viewpoints, their beliefs, their assumptions about data, while kind of suspending judgment, which creates somewhat of a safe zone, if you will, for members to reflect on the data without worrying about what teammates may be thinking about them. It assists groups in making shared meaning of data. We were talking about that confusion and frustration. We collaboratively get shared meaning of data because we look at the data together. We develop shared understanding of what that data specifically means. It helps to replace hunches and feelings with data-based facts, which allows the data-driven decision-making process to be supported by evidence. It also allows team members to examine patterns and trends, exactly what you all said, of performance indicators. And then lastly, looking at data with your team generates the root cause discussion that moves from identifying symptoms and to possible causes of these issues. But like someone said in the chat, if you're looking at data and there's no action, you don't actually do anything. So you have to actually make steps and actionable steps with that data. And we're going to talk about how to do that in a second. I'm sorry, I forgot to click to add all my points. I apologize. Alrighty, so let's talk about collaborative steps to analyzing data. So if we look at this process together, we first collect data. This can be many types of data. Maybe you're using the POPs report or looking at specific summative or formative assessments. You decide with your team which pieces of data you need to be looking at. Second, we analyze the results. This is where that my sister often attracts drama piece comes in. That's where you do those pieces and those steps to analyze that data. You can do the data-driven decision-making process right here. Third, we set team-based goals on what the data tells us are the areas of growth. That's where we add in that action item, that we do something with that data. Fourth, we select effective strategies pertaining to how we can accomplish the goal. How are we going to get where we need to go? And then the fifth and final step is determining results indicators. This is where we identify how we will know if whatever it is we've decided is in step 4 is working. The results indicator should be data-based and specific. Oh, the protocol. I don't know if we posted it. Did we share the protocol, Amy?
I don't know if we have yet, but we can.
We can, and once I'm done, I'll post it into the link into the chat also, so we have it. So there is a protocol for looking at data. We don't have a lot of time to go through the whole protocol, but I want you all to have that as a resource because it's something that you can use to guide the process. Is what we call the data-driven protocol for looking at data. The protocol provides steps and simple phrases that you can use to help guide the conversation, to help teams focus on the evidence of learning or evidence of gaps in the learning, and helps provide kind of a safe environment for everyone who's there. So when we're using these sentence starters and frames and things like that, we're using our I statements, we're being more collaborative, we're being more open, and we're not being accusatory. So moving on, sorry, and I lost my spot. It also ensures that all voices are being heard while also helping everyone on the team to become more skillful at examining and discussing the data. And then lastly, most importantly, it keeps the focus of the conversation, again, on facts and not people. So now that we've looked at the research and we've looked at what the data tells us, or we've looked at how we can kind of do this, we want to hear from adult education practitioners about how the work on the ground is happening in our adult education programs with looking at data. And so while I pass it over to Amy, I'll go ahead and grab that protocol and post it for you all so you have it. But let's get into why we're really here today, which is to hear about how people are really using data on the ground.
Thank you, Sudie. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and start my video again. Thanks, Sudie. Let me share my screen.
While Amy's sharing, I just wanted to mention that I put that data-driven protocol document in the chat.
Thank you so much, Olga.
Thank you, Olga.
So I think before we get to our next, and I think what is the juiciest part of today's webinar, I just want to say that we're looking at data is important. Obviously, it's everywhere. It's part of our work lives and pretty much almost, every aspect of our lives now. But it's important to kind of refocus on this topic at this point in the Leadership Academy because as we prepare for our last training session together in November, one of the things that we'll be asking you guys to do is to add a data slide to your PowerPoints, the ones that you have been drafting and working on and presented to us in small groups over the summer. So part of this is to bring a focus to your own work as part of your improvement project, and kind of what you may still need to do to collect and analyze your data, and to work with your data and your team in order to make change. And we'll be asking you to include some of that information in your improvement project. So that's a bit of the frame for today as well. And with that, I want to welcome our panelists today. We have 3 remarkable panelists. Today's panelists are Marcus Freeman, Assistant Director at Grayson College, Ashley Trevino, Director of Adult Ed and Literacy, also from Grayson College, and Monica Stansbury, Curriculum and Professional Development Manager at Dallas College. So welcome, Marcus, Ashley, and Monica. I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and turn on your cameras now so we can see you guys. Great. Wonderful. Thank you. And what I'd like to do is just maybe ask you one by one to just introduce yourself and say a little about your role and your agency, the context that you work in. So I'm just going to go down by the pictures I see here. So Ashley, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Ashley Trevino, and I'm the Director of Adult Education and Literacy at Grayson College. And we serve 4 counties. We actually have 2 separate grants. One is the Texoma grant that is 3 kind of rural counties, and then Collin, which is a pretty big urban county in the Dallas DFW area.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Welcome.
Thank you.
Marcus.
Good morning, everyone. Marcus Freeman, Assistant Director for Grayson College Adult Education and Literacy Program, working in the Collin County area, along with Ashley Trevino.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marcus. And Monica.
I'm Monica Stansbury. I oversee the curriculum and professional development for our Work Ready U program at Dallas College. My colleague, my colleague is here too. She's our assistant director for the adult education program, Shanice Alexander. So she may want to chime in as we speak.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, Monica. Thanks for that introduction. Just so you guys know, we've prepared some questions in advance for our panelists, so I'll be asking them to first try to respond to some of those questions, and then we've left plenty of time for you guys to ask your questions. So please go ahead and post your questions in the chat as they occur to you, and we will get to them either toward the end or even ongoing. And I'm going to ask Olga and Sudi to help me monitor the chat because I keep losing my chat. So thanks, guys. So let's get started with our first question, which is, and this is to all 3 of you, what kind of data are you using now or in your program to inform your decision making?
Right now, we are using data to determine what classes we need. Specifically in my role, I'm determining student load for our full-timers and adjuncts to determine, how many adjuncts we need in classes. And that's, on the basic level. Where are we seeing our enrollment? Where do we need to put our resources?
Great. So one way to use data is to figure out where the need is around like staffing and kind of make sure that the data is telling you where you need those human resources. Thanks, Monica.
Hello, everyone. This is Marcus again. For Collin, for Grayson College, we're using average daily attendance with our classes being on Zoom right now. The way that we have our registration structured, we're using the average daily attendance to kind of know as new students come in, which classes we need to focus on so we can kind of build those classes up. And so we use the average daily attendance report, and then we are also using post-testing as well to kind of know, how to balance out getting students tested as well as putting them in class and so forth.
Great. Thanks, Marcus. Appreciate that. Ashley, did you want to add to that?
I think that pretty much covered kind of what we've been doing. We do a lot. We like to look at the data, and so that's one way that we've just very recently been, the same thing Monica was talking about, like where we place people. We have kind of needs that have developed in the program since COVID, which is like intake, right? So we need a lot more intake people. So just recently we kind of went through and said, hey, what classes, I think this was Marcus's idea, what classes are maybe like just have a couple of people that we can sort into a different class and then free up that person to do intake for us. It's just been a big help.
And so I would add, because that was enrollment management, but another way that our college on a whole or our program as a whole looks at data is to determine what are our needs in our area for, like, as everyone, I'm sure you probably do this, but it's one way of looking at data. What are your employer needs right now, and where can you fill in the gaps with so many people during COVID needing to reskill and retool? So who can we partner with? Who's in the area? Where do those, and I think that we should acknowledge that, because I think everyone on this call has to do something similar.
Yeah. Great. I appreciate that, Monica, kind of, and also each of you are kind of talking about how what data you're looking at and how you're looking at it has been impacted by COVID, and kind of the shifts that you've had to make to deliver your programs remotely and build those partnerships that Monica's talking about. Thank you. So how do you use data with your team to inform practice and make continuous improvement? I think, just to put some context on this, I think many of us as administrators have, learned either just through trial by fire over the course of our careers that data is important, that we need to use it to tell the story or to talk to our boards or our supervisors and to, for funding purposes. But oftentimes that kind of use of data has not historically trickled down to teachers or even staff and coordinators. I think that's at least what I've seen. So I'm wondering how you use data with your team, and how does that sort of influence your continuous improvement discussions?
So as far as continuous improvement, if you truly want what's best for your students, you'll look at the data to determine where they're most successful. Without kind of being caught up too much in whose idea it was, or how it's been implemented and whose idea that was, or who comes up with the new idea. If you're really dedicated to student success and that continuous improvement for our students, it's really important to engage with that. And so, we'll send out data. We've done this in the past. We send out data to our teachers to say, kind of here's how your class is going, and it gives them an idea of, hey, what I'm doing is really sufficient and I'm doing well, so I'm gonna keep doing this. Or, hey, maybe there's some room for growth. What is it that I can do? But never punitively. We learn by saying, okay, well, this isn't working, so let's figure out a new way to do it.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. Marcus or Monica, do you have anything you want to add to that idea about using data for those continuous improvement, I'd say both kind of reflections and actions?
For me, I think Ashley summed it up well for that, so I don't want to have to try to repeat that.
I'm going to say that it's always a retooling. Like, one of the biggest things with being a college, and I'm sure the other ones can say this, is when you have a college data system that counts things one way, and we have another data system that counts things another way. One of the biggest improvement that we're constantly trying to make is the integration of data across the board, because it gives us truer numbers. So if we have 500 IET graduates, but we don't have a way to show that directly to our college, we have to pull it from two different places. So one of the things that we've been trying to continuously improve is our digital communication across the board to integrate these services so that we can get to the data more quickly, so that we can improve our efficiency. It's as simple as a matter of, in this virtual space, assigning contracts, okay? Which has changed. And I guess I should also state that Dallas College has recently merged into one college. We were 7 different colleges. So just using, when we first started this, we went around to each campus and did kind of a listening tour of what were the best practices at each college. How can we implement that? But now we have to take all of that information and figure out how to better, be more efficient in our overall practices. I know any of you who've gone through an institutional change will understand what I'm discussing. Because I just, some of you taking on new programs, watching change management. So even that, we are looking, because if one college did something differently than how another college did it, we want to take which one is the best, which one is going to work for us. And if we can be more efficient in what we're doing, then we can be quicker to respond to students' needs.
I really appreciate that, Monica, this idea of using, I don't want to say comparative data, but in a way it is when you're looking to say what's working the best, right? Sort of looking across and having points of comparison to say what's working over there and how do we know that using the data, and then how do we replicate that as we move to kind of being one organization or one institution. So I think that's really important. Ashley, I did want to go back to something you said about sharing the data with your team to inform practice. You said you share the learning outcome data with the teachers regularly?
We not super recently, but we have, yes, in the past.
And how when you present it to them, like, have you guys done any training in sort of how to interpret it, or is there a process where they're kind of making sense of it and reporting back to you on what they think and kind of how they're going to change things? I'm really curious about, how you have trained the team, right, in looking at that, because it's not always easy to understand, I think, and kind of making sure that, like, I know in my program, sometimes we would distribute data and it was like it went into the black hole, right? We would never, it was like crickets, So how do you know that the team is looking at it and understanding it and impacting their behavior?
So, I'm not going to deny that I'm sure that there are some people that, got sent it and it went to a black hole. But as part of what I had sent an explanation, being in 4 counties, there might be teachers you don't see for 6 or more months. And so this is handled kind of by email. And so I'd email them individually with an explanation of what they were looking for, what the target was, what the program was at, and what their class was at, so they can kind of get that view. I still had lots of questions that folks asked me back. Well, what does it mean, or how can I, and I loved it, right? So they would ask questions about what I had sent, and then we would have kind of a discussion back and forth or they would say, okay, I see it. Who has the best MSG rate? Whose class, and can I get in touch with them to talk about kind of what they're doing?
And I want to talk about something that Ashley helped me with when we spoke earlier this month. I found that I was trying to do this the hard way. I was wanting everyone to have access to Teams. I wanted all the adjuncts to look at their classes, because they should have been, they should be interested in this, right? They should, I'm a data nerd, so this is great for them. And Ashley said, well, we pull it for them and we share it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would cut back on so many P41s and other things that are happening in this FERPA training. So what I did was I stopped. I said, you know what? I just recently adopted Ashley's protocol. So when I started pulling and talking to adjuncts, I had kind of an embarrassing conversation with one of my instructors when I was in there talking about things that I assumed he knew. And it came very quickly that he was acting like he knew it because of the way I was talking. And I stopped and I was like, you know, it's okay if you don't know this. And I thought, okay, immediately I thought, okay, we have to get together a training that's going to help, because we can do training on different things, but if enough people don't come to it and if they don't actually do it in practice, then it doesn't translate, right? So thank you, Ashley. I've been meaning to tell you thank you for that idea.
You're welcome. So one thing that we have in our employee handbook that goes out to the entire staff, and when new hires come, they get it, is in bold and underline. It says everybody is responsible for grant requirements. So, you know, we kind of talk about that and that they are responsible for, you know, their classroom. And so I think that they see that and say, okay, this is where I can make a difference in the program as well as in student lives.
Great.
And if I can add to that, we also have, Amy, we also have monthly team meetings that are not required. They are on a volunteer basis. But, you know, once again, it gives the team a chance to be able to come together, be able to look at some of the information and ask questions. Because you'll have some that have the courage to ask questions. And like Monica mentioned, you have some that act like they know the information, but do not. And so you have to do a lot of reassuring that it's okay not to know, which sometimes it's hard to be able to actually say, well, I don't know that, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone cannot easily do that. So that brings about another avenue for us to have other conversations.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, Marcus. So that what it sounds like is that you need multiple strategies to kind of have those critical data conversations. So Monica's talking about the process of sharing the information and like making it as easy and user friendly as possible, right? So before she was like, you know, having everybody try to log in and probably, who knows, dealing with a lot of questions about where is it, how do I do this, where is my password, kind of all that, versus kind of I will call it the Ashley method of, you know, streamlining the information and getting it to them. So there's that kind of individual, but then Marcus, you're also saying opportunities for, in the staff meetings, kind of group discussion, group analysis. And it sounds like maybe a little bit of comparative discussions. So, and not necessarily in a, you know, so-and-so is fabulous, look at her MSGs, they're through the roof, and this person's horrible, but like having a more open dialogue about what does the data kind of overall tell us and how do we make decisions around that. So, Marcus, I think you touched on this idea of how to get buy-in and motivate your team to want to use data. So thank you. I want to just ask that question again for Monica and Ashley. Sort of how do you, if folks are afraid of data, so Marcus was saying maybe some folks don't understand it, so working toward that training and that understanding is important. How else do you motivate and get buy-in on that?
With my instructors, you know, I try to use incentives like prizes and packages. I think, when you guys asked me this earlier, I was talking about the contest that we had with the GED conference. We wanted everyone to report their GED numbers. We were trying to get people to get their students to log on to GED Manager, get them signed up so that they report to you. So we put out a contest for whoever had the most GED graduates that year. And those two people were able to go to the GED conference, which I think that year was in some fabulous place. So everyone was going for it. They had to fill out, you know, why they think they should get it. Then we also went through the numbers of graduates that they actually had. And we sent about 3 instructors to that conference based on that contest. And other smaller things I do, I sent out a survey last week because I wanted to get I was looking for something simple, but I needed the information quick. So I said, okay, those of you who fill this out by noon tomorrow, you know, you'll get a prize. And in this case, it might be the prize was a little digital note or thank you card. But sometimes I give out little $5 gift cards just to collect the information that I need. We get to talking and I share the data with them so that in a way that gets them, well, I know you say punitively, but so I don't share it individually. Let's just say, I say, okay, guys, this is where we are on MSGs. and they look at those numbers and they're like, oh man, is that where we are? And it's like, yes, but not without calling out anyone, but it makes everyone to get motivated to say, let's do better in this area. And then my colleague she'll make sure that we also highlight like, okay, we're low in this area, but with IETs and level 1s, we're way up here with employer partnerships. So we kind of punch them, and then we say, oh, but you're so great in this area.
Right. No, I really appreciate that, Monica. I love that, that we want to motivate and use data, and also to celebrate the successes. And again, to kind of get back to that conversation about how do we identify what we're doing well, right? Not just what we're doing not so well, and using data and those conversations to do that. And also, I love the incentives, Monica, that you're, the motivating folks to want to report data and use data in some ways that are, kind of fun and exciting, the prizes and the conference going.
And one more thing, it also helps them, if it's going to be intrinsically motivated. For example, we moved to our platform of eCampus and Blackboard Collaborate. Well, many of the instructors were having problems with that. So I said, if you tell me anecdotally what this means, I can't help you. But if enough people report the issues, then we can see how many counts we have of each issue and take those back and say, here are the problems that we're having. That's an intrinsic motivation, because it's going to help them do their jobs easier if we can get these other things fixed for them. But when you're working with vendors and a large district, you have to come with a large amount of activity. Too many times we might respond to the exception, but if this exception happens 20, 30 times, it's now something that is a larger issue that we need to address holistically.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask you guys one more question, and then I want to open it up to our panelists. So I guess what I want to ask you is, what challenges have you had influencing your team using that data, and how did you address it? Sort of what worked? If you could give us a little, and of course, I love those real details from the field, like real specific anecdotes about what wasn't working, how did you bring data, and what changes did you make from that worked?
So I would love to talk about this. So I'm huge. One of the cornerstones of kind of where I come from is in transparency. I want people to understand that I don't make decisions because I feel a certain way about a certain product or a certain way of doing things. We make the decisions based on what's best for our students, what's best for our teachers, on what's actually happening. And for those of you that don't know, Grayson recently, within the last year, actually it's been a little over a year now, kind of took Colin on as a new county for us. And there were some things that, I came in and said, I want it different. I want a couple of things different, And some people were just so excited. They were like, oh yes, this is what we've been waiting for. We're thrilled. Some people were less than excited. Right? They were like, I don't see it. And I said, okay, please bear with me. Bear with me and try this, because I've seen the data and I've seen it happen in my Texoma program, and we can watch it happen here. And last year, I think for the first time, the Colin program hit their 65% by December 31st target. And so I remember at our little Christmas party, there was one person in particular who wasn't that excited about the things that I wanted to do. Said, all right, Ashley, you were right. I see it. I see it now. So
when you came in, you kind of introduced the data and you proposed in conversation some solutions, and then they were really able to see those numbers uptick, and that was kind of like how folks kind of moved over to this idea of using data for improvement.
And when you're transparent in that way, and when you and your team can kind of set egos aside and not worry about whose idea it was or whose idea you're replacing, you can really come up with the best solutions to issues or to challenges by just kind of being humble in that and thinking like, oh, well, it doesn't matter if the team has come up with an idea that is replacing my idea. That's okay, because I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. Now we have new information that leads us somewhere else, and that's okay.
Right.
That's okay.
Great. I really appreciate that notion around using data and being more transparent, you know, by using it and having conversations. How about Marcus?
Yes. So we talk about influencing with data. You know, it's so much more than that. And I want to try to stay focused on the question. But when you talk about influence, you have to kind of also include trust. Ashley was talking about the transparency. What's the reasoning for you actually bringing this data to me? So if there's no trust there, knowing that it's not going to be punitive, but this is for the benefit of the program, you know, then the receptors, the teachers, those that are receiving the data can accept it a little bit more. And that may just take time. And, you know, just constantly repeating and going to the individuals. And, you know, maybe I went route A and that didn't work. Well, let me try route B and see if that works. Same data, but just a different delivery method. But once again, you have to have that trust, that transparency for others to be able to see we're all on the same team. And it may take some rebuilding before you can actually gain the influence, you know, for that. So
I really appreciate that, Marcus, and trust. And I think that goes back to some of what Sudhi was talking about with the protocols, which is creating that kind of safe space. Yes. And having trust is a big part of that, right? So that it's not a blame game. It's really about saying, you know, let's look at this together and come up with solutions together. So I really appreciate that. Monica, do you have a specific example from Dallas about when you saw some data and you said, oh, we need to make this change, and how you did it?
I have a simple one that we were trying to pull all of our courses when we went into the pandemic mode. And from a college level perspective, we realized that we did not have a marker from each, because we were all 7 different colleges. We needed some type of marker to determine what are all of our classes from all across the campuses. So Shanice Alexander worked with, we came to her, was like, look, this is an issue. I need to be able to see all of them. So she worked with our departments to come up with certain rubrics that would be just for our classes across all of the campuses, so that we could more easily pull data to one location rather than having to piece it together manually.
Great.
That we were able to see student information, who was logging on. It just helped so much in this virtual space.
Right. Great. Thanks, Monica. So I want to pause for a minute and ask Sudhi and Olga if we've had any. I still can't find my chat, I'm sorry to say.
No, ma'am.
So for our participants, this is a great opportunity now for you, because you have Ashley, Marcus, and Monica here to you know, answer any questions you have about using data, or you know, this is a safe space, so you can say, you know, whatever you want to say here in terms of, I don't understand this, or we're struggling with that, or how did you do this? And so we'd love to get your questions. I'm going to give you guys a minute to ask some questions.
Giselle says Ashley and Marcus are the best bosses. Maura says,
don't say that too loud now.
Maura says, do you develop a strategic plan to set your yearly program goals and identify the specific data sources you will use to analyze data to be sure you're meeting your identified goals?
Absolutely. One thing that I love, so when we talk about yearly program goals, the first thing I think of are targets. We absolutely use our last year's data to negotiate. That's one of my favorite things to do with this data, is negotiate. We use our last year, what we were able to accomplish, to determine what we think we can accomplish this year. So absolutely, if we struggle in one area, but we're doing great in another, we're able to say, hey, you know, we can serve more, maybe even more than we did last year. Did we hit this goal easily? Did we hit it by December? Is there more? And I'm not sure if everybody on this call knows, but when you negotiate targets, you can tell the state, you know, lower this, but raise this. And so if you see something that you've done well and you think you could hit even more, you can say, okay, I can go this much further, but I struggled in this area, so let's do this a little bit.
Amy, I see that I'm looking at the participant roster, and because this is a group for leaders, I know that I'd like to hear the question posed to the panelists if that's something we can do, because I'm sure that some of them would have things to share about what was their challenge and how did they address it and what worked.
That's
and
excellent.
We do have another question in the chat also.
Okay. I think Monica, I think that's a great idea. So let's just make sure we answer the questions that are being posed to you guys. And then I think that would be an awesome thing to do, open the floor. Yeah.
Katrina said, how do you get over people taking it personally when you start asking these CQI questions? Why was this approach chosen? Why do we think we did not meet these targets, etc.?
Well, I'll answer the first portion of that question. How do you get people over taking it personally? You really can't, because you can't make someone receive what information you have for them. They either trust or they do not. The only thing that you can really do for that is just make sure you're being the best version of you, if you will, and just really understand that, you know, not everyone is going to like the information that you have for them. I can't be someone that I'm not. But I can make sure that, well, one of the other ways that you can kind of help out with that is really putting time in with the individuals, checking on them outside of just data, and letting them know that you're really concerned with them as a person. I mean, when you're managing, you're not just managing the job, but you're actually managing that person life, if you will, for lack of a better word. So being able to touch bases with them outside of your regular meetings and everything, just to make sure they're doing okay as a person. So that can kind of help them as well with that. Anyone else?
I think a lot of it is kind of how you approach it too, right? So like, I don't necessarily say, Giselle, I'm gonna call her out because she's here, please come into my office so we can discuss this, right? Like I might go to them and say, hey, so I was running some numbers and I noticed, let's talk about it. Like, what do you think? And I genuinely want to know what it is that they think. It's not me coming in and saying, already having decided in my mind what I think the problem is or what I think should be done, but genuinely engaging them in a conversation to say, hey, where are we going wrong? And asking myself what I could do or what I should have done to make this easier for the instructor to do with their students. So is there something the program, and genuinely asking, is there something the program could be doing to better support you? And, what truly is it?
I appreciate that. Thank you. So I love Monica's suggestion. Sudhi, do we have any other questions?
Nope,
okay.
That was the last one.
So with our last few minutes with our panelists, I love the idea of having you guys share what challenges you have influencing change with your team using data and what's worked. I'm really interested in kind of what challenge has come up and what's worked. And so I'll ask you to type that in the chat, or if you want to, we can you can unmute and share, come on and share.
This is Shanice Alexander, and I'll just jump in for Dallas colleges. Just to kind of piggyback on what Monica said, we're going through a transition as a college. Our department, Work Ready U, which houses the adult education and literacy program, has also been centralized, and we're now moving 7 different teams into one functioning system. So we're going through insurmountable change in the middle of a pandemic. I have people now reporting to me that I haven't seen since January. So for us, what's worked is, and this is an ongoing battle, and I know Monica will attest to it, it's just creating new systems as we go, using data to be able to be consistent, to be able to plan for measurable skills gains and know the outcomes that we're intending. So creating systems, making sure that we have, as she mentioned earlier, rubrics set up, ways in which we can track our students with institutional data against teams data, marrying that information up is a process in and of itself when we have, 6,000, 7,000 students that we see on an annual basis. So for us, is revisiting systems based on our new environment and making sure that we enforce those and become change agents during this pandemic time.
Thank you, Shanice. That's really important. And I really, again, kind of like how you're talking both about big systems and kind of having a big process and a big view, but also kind of how do you do that across teams, especially that are large and right now dispersed, right? And that we don't see one another. Somebody else, I'd love to hear from another of our Academy participants about some way that you've used data to address a challenge and how it worked. And I know this is not a shy group, so. Okay, Joyce is posting, I think. Sudi, can you take a look at that?
Yeah, Joyce said, I have a small team, but we seem to be able to agree on how we use data because we all see it as being beneficial to our program. Data certainly drives what we do and is so necessary when it comes to meeting our targeted goals.
Great, thanks, Joyce.
One thing I would like to add when we're talking like challenges about introducing changes due to data is kind of allowing room for discomfort of change. That's okay. And I think like by addressing it and saying like, hey, we're going through an uncomfortable time right now. We know it's going to be rough. We know. And so feel free to, we don't necessarily expect someone to say, okay, we're going to have these changes and for them to just be a robot and accept it and do it, right? Like leaving space for that discomfort and addressing it and acknowledging it, I think is a big kind of way to close that gap.
Yeah, actually, I think being comfortable with being uncomfortable requires a certain level of trust, exactly what Marcus mentioned earlier. So you do have to kind of acknowledge exactly what all three of you have said, the person that is included in this and how that person might feel, and then making sure that we're all bringing that together and acknowledging people's feelings without making the data about that person. And so, yeah, if you have that trusting relationship, then it doesn't feel as weird being uncomfortable in front of your peers. You know what I mean? Like you're ready to do that work and to dig in. I see Amy posted the question.
Well, yeah, no, we have about one more minute, Monica. So do you want to give us our last comment?
Sure. This is a pandemic and we're approaching change. So I have to tell my instructors that it's not a personal thing. We have to get on this train and we have to keep it moving. We have to respond to students because students are losing their jobs. They don't have access to good internet services. They don't have access to food in some cases. And so while we don't have a lot of time to sit and debate right now what is, what this is what the data is. The question that you asked about, okay, am I going to take this personal or not? I really don't have time. I would love to be in a space where I can make you feel comfortable about this, but no one is comfortable right now. So we have to move with the data and where we're going to help our students.
Really appreciate that, Monica. Thank you. Keeping the focus on the students and their needs. And I actually think because anybody who's in this business is in it really for the students, like however much we disagree with each other, we all love our students and we want them to succeed. So really appreciate that, Monica, because I think keeping the focus on the students and what their needs are also, it depersonalizes it and it reminds us of our shared mission. So thank you for that. So I want to get big round of applause for Ashley, Marcus, and Monica for coming and sharing. You know, when we invited them, they said, you know, we don't necessarily have all the answers, so we might be talking about, you know, the good, bad, and the ugly. And I do appreciate you guys putting yourselves out there to share your own kind of personal stories, what's happening at your agency, and your struggles with us. So thank you very much. So guys, in our last few minutes, I want to talk about where we're heading as we kind of round the last corner of our training together. It's hard to believe. I think back to our time in Austin, of course, very fondly, because it was probably one of the last times that any of us were out in public together. But we are approaching our final day of training. And so what I'm going to ask you to do in preparation for that is to update and post your project slides by October 26th, and we'll send you a reminder in the COP. What you're going to be doing is going back to your original PowerPoint that you created over the summer and updating or modifying, changing anything you want to those original slides, and adding 2 slides. One with outcomes and data on your improvement project. So what data have you collected? What outcomes have you gleaned or analyzed? And then a second slide focused on lessons and challenges that you've had. And that could both be, you know, lessons learned about, if I'm going to do part 2 of this project, this is what I'm going to do. Or if I did this project again, these are some of the things I would think about. And also, it could be personal challenges, right? Because this is a leadership academy where we're also developing our individual skills. You could say things like, you know, I wish that I had kind of worked on my communication strategies or trust building a little bit more with the team, you know. And again, the idea is to, you know, be learning about ourselves and how to lead through these improvement projects. So it's really okay to sort of look both at yourself and at kind of the agency and project outcomes. You're going to be presenting those outcomes and lessons learned to one another in small groups on November 9th when we meet again. We want to ask you to consider submitting a presentation for TALE. Beth, do we have any additional information about TALE to share?
I do not have anything at this time. Olga or Deb, have any of you heard anything about TALE?
Hey Beth, this is Lori. I have not heard anything on the TWC end about what's going on with TALE. I think they're struggling with being virtual or doing face-to-face. But it'll still be, I'm sure, the second week of February.
Great.
And Olga has posted that it does look like it will be, they've gone ahead and made the decision to go virtual.
Great. So we will post in the COP and share with you guys some of that information, but we'd love it if you would want to present on your experience in the academy and your improvement project as part of that. So we'll be sharing more information with you in the portal. We don't yet have specifics on the academy for next year, but we'd love for you to encourage other up and coming leaders and folks in the field that you know or at your agency. We'd love to have you encourage them to apply. And then just as a little reminder, you've gotten some emails from Deb and the TCAL team with information on the leadership development courses that are in Percipio. And we're asking you guys to use that platform. There's an amazing amount of terrific resources in there to complete 3 of the 10 tracks in there.
And Amy, if I can add anything,
Please.
I put it in the, this is Deb, everybody. Hi, good morning. I put it in the chat. I ran a report day before yesterday to see where everybody was at. And I just wanted to recognize Mauro Serrano, Carla Lamb, Joyce Kendrick, and Giselle Lumbreras, who have started and completed some of the courses, completed some book summaries. You know, I know, oh, bless you. Sorry, hubby was sneezing. He's a pretty loud sneezer. There's some phenomenal information in there. We're only asking you to complete 3 of those 10 tracks. So please take the time to do so. I'll send out another email to both groups today just to remind you of the resources. There's audiobooks in there included in those tracks as well. So email me directly, Deborah Hargrove, all one word, at TAMU if you have any questions.
Great. Thanks so much, Deb.
Yep.
Amy, there is a question in the chat asking
Okay.
if there will be time slots for November 9th.
Good question. We will probably we haven't yet figured out how to do this well and, you know, for the best mixer possible, the presentation. So let us get back to you. Probably there will not be time slots. Most likely we will be in breakout groups, and several of them, so we can do as much mixing and presenting as possible. Good question. And thanks, Deb. So just very quickly, I know we've run out of time. If you could post in the chat just one reflection you have on today's learning, we'd love to just hear from you for a minute in the chat before we say goodbye. I really just want to thank you all very, very much for participating today. And it's really nice to see everybody again. So if you could just go ahead and post in the chat one reflection. Sudi, I can't see the chat, sorry.
Okay, Carly says, leave space for discomfort. Denise said, confirm the need for transparency and data communication. I said, sometimes I have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and that's okay, quoting Ashley. That's all we have so far.
Great. Well, thank you all. And
oh, wait, we have more.
Oh,
do you want the other ones?
Yeah.
Mara said, reinforce the value of data to move programs forward. Katrina said, establish the trust and check in with your team individually. Joyce said, we should use data to see what we do well and what we don't.
Nice. Those are excellent. Thank you guys for sharing. So we're sending you lots of warm wishes, and we will see you on November 9th. Take care, everybody, and stay well.